This lecture is on the doctrine of double effect. Now, what is it? It's when one act will lead both to a good and bad effect. It is permissible to perform that action only if all four of the following conditions are satisfied. So, for example, let's say in war the general wants to blow up, the airport so that their jets can't fly. However, right next to the airport is an apartment building with civilians. Now, if you bomb that airport, it's also going to hurt those civilians or kill those civilians. What do? Well, this is where some people have used this doctrine of double effect to say maybe under certain circumstances are these things okay. That's the idea, right? That one action that has both a good and bad effect, it would be okay, it has double effect, but it has to follow these four conditions. So, what are the four conditions? The moral condition, principle condition. An act cannot itself be the kind that violates some moral principle. So, the act of, perhaps bombing an airport, that if that violates a moral principle, then there you go, you can't do it in itself. But maybe the act is saving someone's life, right? Or amputating an arm, right, to save someone's life. Now the act also has the bad effect of taking away their arm, but the act itself, what's going on is that you're trying to save the life. So that doesn't violate the moral condition, principle condition, right? So the initial thing that you're going after, is that violating a moral condition? That's what this is about. The second is a means to end condition. We're going to talk about this in more detail, so I'll just read it for right now. The bad effect cannot itself be the means by which one achieves the good effect. The right intention condition, one must intend to achieve only the good effect, but not the bad effect. And the proportionality condition, the good effect cannot be, the good effect has to be at least as great as the bad effect, right? So it has to be at least 1 in 1. If not, the good effect is better. Okay, so I kind of talked about this already. The moral principle condition, it can't violate a moral principle. An act is always wrong no matter the condition, the consequences. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward. The second condition we have to think about more carefully. So the bad effect cannot itself be the means by which one achieves the good effect. So what does this mean? So sometimes an act just produces two independent effects, right? So Sam steals a loaf of bread and what does it do? This one action causes the baker's financial loss, but it also feeds Sam's family, right? So that's where one action produces two of independent effects, right? But sometimes there are actions where they are dependent, where one follows from the other. So some effects can only be achieved by other effects whereon depends on the other, okay? So let's say the terrorists, ultimately what they want is to gain media attention, right? So that they'll be on the news. Let's say that's effect X. However, they decide to think that to cause, for this media attention, to cause 20 deaths effect Y with a bomb at the bus station. So notice the media attention, effect X, is dependent on effect Y, right? So what this condition is saying is that dependent effects, where this is dependent effects are bad, these are unacceptable, right? So if you want the effect of a good effect, let's say gaining media attention, maybe there is a cause that should, have attention, right? So let's say, some sort of civil rights issue, right? But in order to do that, cause 20 deaths, right? No, obviously that's This is the means end. The means doesn't justify the ends, right? So that's condition 2. Condition 3 is the right intention, and you must intend to achieve only the good effect and not the bad effect, right? So even if the bad effect is foreseen, even if you know that I know that it's going to happen, you can't intend that to happen, right? That's not the reason why you're doing the thing. So maybe it is good to go after that airport and bomb the airport, and you know that there's an apartment building there. You can't bomb the air. You only have to intend to bomb the airport, not hurt people, right? Now the war example is controversial, so I'll leave it at that. But maybe let's say it's a surgery issue, right? A surgery issue where my intent is not to, let's say I have to cut off your arm to save your life. My intent is not to cause you pain while cutting off your arm. If that's the case, then that's bad, right? I don't have the right intention. But if the right intention is to save your life, but the effect I know that is going to cause you a lot of pain, then it's fine, right? Then it satisfies the right intention, right? Doctor removes disease in uterus, foreseeing death of fetus, but does not intend the death of fetus, right? So now if the doctor intended the death of the fetus through the removal of the uterus, right? If that was his or her intention, then that's not the third condition is not satisfied, okay? Condition 4 is proportionality, and this is where the good effect must be at least as great as the bad effect, right? So if the good effect is a life saved and the bad effect is a life lost, that's 1-to-1. That's proportional. So it at least has to be like a 1-to-1. But if you say like a good effect is $100,000 and the bad effect is 10 lives lost, this is not proportional, right? 10 lives are worth more than $100,000, right? Okay, so you get this idea? So all 4 conditions have to be met. So here's an example of the pregnant woman with uterine cancer, right? So the moral principle condition, removing diseased uterus, violates no moral principle, right? I mean, that's not a wrong thing to do, to remove a diseased, cancerous uterus. So it doesn't violate a moral principle. Okay, check, right? Number 2, means end. Does the means justify the end? The bad effect of the fetus dying is not the means to saving the life, right? So it's not like we're killing the fetus to save the life. We're taking out the cancerous uterus, and as a result, it kills the fetus. But that's not the means by which, I mean, it's not directly killing the fetus. Does that make sense? Okay. Although we can foresee it. The right intention condition is as long as the doctor's intention is to save the mother's life, then it's okay, right? So if the doctor's intention was to kill the fetus, let's say he has he hates fetuses for some reason, and he goes after to, kill a fetus, even though he does it by removing the diseased uterus, then that was wrong, right? And number 4, the proportionality condition, the good effect be at least as great as the bad effect. Here it's life for life. So in this kind of case, a pregnant woman with a uterine cancer, it seems like the doctrine of double effect is actually, it works, right? At least that's what's argued. So another kind of case that we can kind of slowly think about, torturing innocent life for actionable intelligence. I don't know if some of you are familiar with a TV show called 24. It's an older show, and where Jack Bauer, the main character, often would torture someone in order to get actionable intelligence, right? And this is also, and torturing an innocent life. So we have to think, am I violating a moral principle by torturing someone? Yes, right? Torturing someone is not morally right. So that might not be a case of double effect. Means to end, are the bad means the manner to get the right end? Yeah, it is. Right intention. Maybe the intention is to get the information. Proportionality. Well, it could actually be that, let's say this is actionable intelligence that saves a lot of lives. So that's why it's kind of confusing, right? Because on the one hand, you're cheering for Jack Bauer in the show because like he gets the information, but at the other hand, on the other hand, we're like, oh my gosh, why is he's torturing an innocent person? Um, so we can analyze that correctly, right? Because it seems like two of the conditions are not being met, and the two of the conditions may be being met, right? So that's why we struggle with that kind of case. But in any case, torturing an instinct for action is not a case. It does not satisfy the doctrine of double effect, right? Now, if you go strictly utilitarian, that might work, right? But doctrine of double effect, it does not satisfy it. Okay, sending drones to kill ISIS members and populate, I don't know. I just threw that out there because that could be something, and war examples are a little more tricky, right? Are we violating any moral principle by doing that, right? Are we do we have the right intention, proportionality, right? Means to end are the bad means the manner to get the right end, right? So that's what you have to kind of think about concerning especially war examples. They get tricky. Okay. What are some concerns? And by concerns, I mean difficulties. But as you've seen throughout the semester, that every theory and every kind of doctrine and view has problems or difficulties or concerns. That doesn't mean that it may not be a good position, but it's something to think about, and we have to be kind of humble and know its limits. Okay, so that's the case for this. The doctrine of double, in some cases, seems to show that the doctrine of double effect (DDE) gets the answer wrong. So this, and so let's say, for example, there's a woman cannot give birth, whether vaginally or through C-section, because of some sort of condition, to a severely hydrocephalic infant. And this is a case where the brain has so much, the fetus's brain has so much liquid, it just the infant's just going to die, right? Now you have to perform a craniotomy basically to save the woman, and what that just means is surgery on basically crush the skull to save the woman. So notice in this case something is being violated, right? The means to end, right? In order to save the woman's life, the end, the ultimate goal, the way that we do it is to kill the fetus or the infant, right? Let's just assume that that's something that is, bad, right? So if that's the case, then, the doctrine of double effect, this obviously seems like you should do that because the infant would die anyways, but the doctrine of double effect would say you can't do that or it violates it. So that seems to be, at least it gets the answer wrong, quote unquote wrong. Okay, another possible kind of concern with this doctrine is that it's possible for the very same act to count as right or wrong depending on how we describe it. So let's say the pregnant woman with uterine cancer. So if we describe it in the way that you described earlier, that in taking out the uterus, the cancerous uterus, what's happening is that we're letting the fetus die. However, if we described it a different way, it could be that we're killing the fetus, right? And killing would violate the moral principle condition, right? So in that case, depending on how you kind of word it, is it a case of letting die or a case of killing? If it's a case of killing, that action is wrong. If it's a case of letting die, then it's okay, it's morally permissible. Okay. Another thing that people have brought up, and that is when we think about that kind of third condition of right intention condition, right? So is it really the case that the moral worth of the action is switched to right or wrong by just the intention, right? Um, so that seems to be, some people have a hard time with thinking about that. Well, I hope this was helpful and that this kind of made the reading more accessible, because I know the reading was probably a little difficult. And if you have more questions, let me know. All right, I'll see you guys online.